Good afternoon, everybody. How's everyone doing? All right, that's what I like to hear. It's almost 3:30, so we're all going to be finishing out this session together. I know it's the afternoon. I know it's hot and sweaty. Don't worry, we're going to have some fun. So, first thing what I want you to do, everybody reach up and stretch. And with your hand, reach into your bag and grab this little cardboard box that everyone gave you in your nice Open Hardware Summit goodie bag. Inside, you will find a nice little piece of electronics. No, I didn't make it. Yes, I'm going to use it. Open source. Reach in and grab out this little orange device. There's a little power switch on-off. I'll let you find that while I say a couple of words. First of all, thank you to Open Hardware for happening here in Philadelphia this year. All right, yeah, round of applause. I'm sure many of you know last year it was in Rome, and here in Philadelphia we're in the habit of importing things from Rome, especially this week. I'm much more excited about today. Don't tell anybody. All right, so I am Bevan Weissman. I am with New American Public Art. We make large, interactive, artistic installations, often involving a lot of open source technology, often generating a lot of open source solutions. So, one thing that excites me about Open Hardware, by now you probably have this guy booted up, turned on. If it's not, there's a little plastic circle covering the battery. Try taking that off. Hold it up if you got it. All right, now wave it around, yeah. Now go ahead and turn it around so the camera can see. There we go. So I think that open hardware for the individual is fun and educational, but open hardware together in a community is transformative and beautiful and artistic. And so this is a great little example of some of the kind of stuff that we do. We do social interventions out in the public, large scale. What I'm talking about is also known as placemaking. In reality, all places are made. They all have some kind of social construct already built into them. This term has also been bandied around quite a lot in the past 40 years or so, and it goes by many, many, many names. Sometimes it gets a little bit confusing. What kind of intervention are you doing in the public space? But as all of us are makers, I think we can all agree that we like making things, we like sharing it, we like bringing it to the public. Placemaking also has the power to identify an entire space just based on a couple of key icons. On the count of three, what city is this right in here? 1, 2, 3? Right, Chicago. Everyone knows that. So one of the powers of public art is transformation. The place is known now as the home of the bean, or, I think Cloud's Rest, Cloud City. I don't even know the real name. It's just the bean. Now, this kind of public art had its heyday a couple decades ago. We funded very large sculptures and structures, like the Eiffel Tower, more than a couple decades, I would say. But where was it? Josh Pierce was saying that I think 10% of the scientists get their proposals funded. In the public art world, it's more like 0.2%. Also going to established white-haired people who are already quite famous. So there's a big gap in terms of individuals and small groups that have much smaller budgets and still big aspirations who want to make things. So this is Parking Day. Parking Day happened yesterday in Philadelphia. Let's give another round of applause for fun things happening in town this weekend. If you're not familiar with it, Parking Day is where parking spots on the street are guerrilla style taken over and imbued with temporary installations. Now, one thing that we get into as a group when we do our installations, this is one that happened over in Camden across the river last year, we run into the same couple of problems over and over again. We like to build big things, and it's really hard to make interventions into the public space on that scale, especially temporarily. This is called Blue Hour. It's a series of interactive light sculptures, about 20 feet tall. Here's a little GIF of them in action. I'll let that play for a little bit. But we need a couple of essential items when we do installations like this. We need power, obviously. We need structure. There has to be something to hold up these physical bits. And what we would love to also have is internet. We're all makers of things. We know that the IoT is here. So let's get these built things out into the public and not just in our labs. This is another project we did recently in Las Vegas called Your Big Face, where we encouraged people to have their face digitally projected onto a giant polygon and make funny faces at passerby. One thing that we've learned from this work, doing it over and over again, is that people love to be creative. This is a generative construction project we did called Neodia 2, the magnetic planet, where people are encouraged to build little cities out of metallic bits and pieces. This is the universal set, a giant dodecahedron that people can write on. And one thing we've seen, as you all know over and over again, people are creative if given the opportunity, right? If given a public canvas, people will write on it. If given a way to express themselves, they will do it. We want to shape our environment. This is what we want to do as makers and engineers and architects. Now, there's a term for this. It's the built environment, right? I hate that term. I think it should be called the building environment because built implies that it's done, right? It's like growing up. You don't ever want to grown up. That means your changing is finished. You want to be always growing up. So there are a couple of projects out here that capitalize on this sort of desire to build and shape things. This is a great one by the Art and Technology Lab here, the Free Art and Technology. And it's a universal construction kit so that as a school child you can attach all of your favorite Tinker Toys and Legos and Kinects and all sorts of different hardware together. There's the universal set right there, free and open and downloadable for your 3D printer. But this is good for playing around on the attic floor or on a school table. It's not really good for city-size scale. So just to make the analogy of the hardware that we're used to dealing with, this is another open source microcontroller, the Rascal, made by one of our co-founders, Brandon Stafford. And the Rascal, just like any other microcontroller, needs a couple of things. It needs power, needs internet, and needs a structural attachment point, so it's not just rattling around your case and getting all banged about. If you've ever been to the airport, you know that sometimes utilities are hard to find. I think we've all had this experience when we're sitting and struggling to find a free laptop or phone charger plug. So out in the built environment, utilities are hard to come by, they're hard to change, there's limited access. And sometimes it's quite expensive. So in the city of Boston, putting one bolt in the sidewalk will cost you $5,000, and it will take months to do. This is a problem we recently faced with a local community group that wanted to do an installation temporarily. We needed to bolt it down. That involved a meeting with the Public Improvement Committee, on which had to sit a licensed engineer, which costs a lot of money. We also had to advertise that meeting in the local paper, the Boston Globe, which costs a lot of money. So just even getting in the door in the public realm can be quite prohibitive for small budgets. So our solution that we are advocating as an open source solution, we're calling the Artport, or the Public Art Frameworks. It's stupid simple. It's just one of those things that hasn't happened yet and we really believe needs to happen. It's a structural attachment point, basically a couple of J-bolts set into concrete in a set configuration of patterns. It is a waterproof enclosure housing electrical connections and a dedicated Ethernet line. There's a little cross-section of it so you can see the interior of the J-bolts there. That's about 1,200 pounds of concrete as an anchoring point. And when it's all buttoned up, it looks just like the sidewalk, flush mount. You never know it was there. So what this thing is a reusable, releverageable public art utility. Some things you could do with it are install a giant glass canopied tree in the middle of the plaza and not really have to worry about a base or any other additional supporting structure because that 1,200-pound block of concrete will suffice just fine. You could ready-made hook up your interactive electronic kiosk, which you can't see the solar box because there isn't one. You can't see all the extension cords running beneath cord covers because they're buried underground. And this same exact port can be releverageable over and over and over again. Because like I said, the era of the large, permanent public art piece is sort of behind us. All the organizations are about temporary, releverageable, changeable pop-up spaces. We also are going to think about a bigger size, maybe about 4,000 pounds of concrete down there, depending on the soil type, so you can do really fun things like this. These are just a couple examples. I know that all of you are much more creative than me, and so you can come up with some great ideas to have a test bed prototype out in the public that you can use. Little headlight action at night, too. Now, once again, I want to remind you, this is mainly intended for small groups using to leverage their resources to greater effect. It's not for giant public art installations, some of which like we have on the Ben Franklin Parkway. It's about changeability. It's about getting more people involved in shaping our built environment. We really believe that the more people build things actively out in the public, the more invested they are in the space, and the more stewardship there is for our public spaces, right? We're all builders of things in the lab. Now we can be builders of things outside as well. Now, I also work with the Workshop School, which is a project-based high school in West Philadelphia. My workshop kids still here? All right. Now, we're training an entire generation of 15 to 18-year-olds to be makers. That's their entire curriculum in our school. Now, when they graduate, wouldn't it be great if each individual social organization that they're connected to has the capability of building really big, awesome, impressive, powerful things in the public for a very minimal cost? I think it would be. So who's it good for? It's good for the event planners who are programming spaces that need to change continuously. It's good for people who do the actual construction, to have a modular kit that's the same every time. It's good for cities themselves because, you know, it kind of builds that cred as developing a public place, as a place where things happen, where art and creativity happens. It's great for sociologists who want to study the data that are generated by interactive sculptures. Don't have enough time to talk about all the data we generate, but part of the perks of having interactive art, it always generates a record when it's used and how it's used. So these data are quite interesting on a sociological level. It's great for content creators like everyone in this room, for people who want to express their creativity on a grander scale. We started out pretty small too, and through leveraging projects that were already built and hacking them in interactive ways, we started to get into that bigger and bigger arena, and we just want everyone else to be able to do the same thing easily. So I just want to remind you once again, the Arduino, great open hardware platform for small things. The open hardware that I want is a bolt in the sidewalk that doesn't cost an arm and a leg and months of planning to go through. Thank you, everybody. I want to thank my fellow... Thank you. I want to thank my fellow co-founders at New American Public Art and all of the great organizations that let us play around with going through painful permitting processes. I also want to give a shout out to the makerspaces we're involved with, especially a couple right here in Philadelphia, the Philly Sculpture Gym and NextFab Studio. Mike over here is going to be giving a tour later of NextFab down in South Philly. If you're curious about a local makerspace, I definitely recommend checking it out. So thanks again. Tomorrow for the tour. Thanks again, everybody.